This is Let's Talk, getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This on-the-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492 or 663-8317. And today I'm Paul Raffel and Shelley Rugg
over here,
sitting at the board.
Stephen Hurwitz.
And Stephen Hurwitz, our co-hosts today. And today...
Yes, what are we talking about today?
We are discussing... material intelligence.
What?
What?
What's that?
What is that, you might ask?
I think I just did.
Well, material intelligence, this meaning of it anyway, I guess there's other meanings to that, but it was, I discovered it, or it was sent to me in a post, a blog, by... Glenn Adamson. He's a curator, writer he writes about design and craft and art, and he's a scholar at the Yale Center for British Art. And he's written a book called Fewer Better Things, The Hidden Wisdom of Objects.
Fewer, better. Wow.
Fewer, better things. Yeah. So fewer, better things. So... it's about, and it's his whole thing is about acknowledging the craftsmanship in everything that you own. His favorite thing is to point out the chair that you're sitting in. What about the chair? Do you know where it came from? Do you know what materials are used? How would you if you had to make that chair, how would you go about doing it? And how a little more consciousness about the things that we own, the stuff that we own, where they came from, and who's involved in making them, and what materials are involved, and how they're all put together, and how you would repair something if it stops working. It also, that leads to a greater consciousness in consumerism, of course. You want fewer, better things. I have a coffee mug that is my favorite coffee. I don't need another coffee mug.
This is distinctly un-American, I'd say.
Well, I think it also...
Exactly.
Let's see. It goes along with Deepak Chopra's concepts of spiritual wealth, and one of the concepts is best first. Which ties into the quality aspect, and also the this movement to simplifying your life and clearing the clutter and all of that. What they talk about is you relate to the object in question, and you ask yourself, does this spark joy in me? And so
the
I think
end result is joy. Is that what we're supposed to aim for?
A beautiful life, I think, and that beautiful life is not only what's around us, but it's also the way we interact with the world around us. Yeah. So that would tie in as well.
And I'm trying to find it in the article here. That's why I'm.
It's a long article.
It's the appreciation of the material things would have a ripple effect on our social contract, I suppose, on society, because you have a greater appreciation. Not just because you're consuming less, perhaps, but just instead of kind of going through life and just being unconscious, it's, as Deepak Chopra said.
Don't you think it's very romantic?
Well, romantic? I think it's a lot of the subjects that we've covered on this show end up being about conscious living, right? About having about being aware of the things that we're doing and the effects that they have on others and on the world. And part of the effect here is that when things are mass-produced, you tend not to have a relationship with them. They're just something that you use for a while and then you throw them away, maybe.
Well, and that's actually how things are made these days.
Yeah, exactly.
They're designed to break down and fall apart and not work, especially if you look at technology. They're constantly pushing the next best thing. And the technology becomes incapable of upgrading, incapable of being able to function on certain levels after a while. So your hand is forced.
You always have to have the next update.
Yeah.
And the upgrade.
You know, I remember reading about the light bulb and how, in fact, one of the first light bulbs is still burning I think it's in a firehouse somewhere, and still burning. And I think the story goes that the manufacturers of light bulbs saw that and said, wait a minute, this isn't going to work. And we're making these light bulbs too well. Right. So they got together and decided to make the light bulbs with a specific longevity so they could sell more light bulbs.
That's right.
That's right.
It's all part of that whole capitalist monster that we've created.
Planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
Planned obsolescence.
Right.
It's,
But, it used to be
Gotta keep
built
selling
to
light
last was a thing that we valued, or quality, the fine craftsmanship, the materials that were used. But it also can be elitist.
Right. Well, it doesn't have to be expensive to be a good object. My mug wasn't expensive. It's not a Jeff Koons mug.
Oh, no.
It didn't cost $3 million.
It wasn't like uber shiny.
It was just this.
I'd like
it's just
to see
a blue
Jeff
mug,
Koons
and it
mug.
fits my hand perfectly, and it's
cozy.
warm. The handle's just right. I've got big hands. It's got a big handle, and
if it broke, could you make a new one?
Could I make one? There you are. See, well, so now. If I had, I do know someone who's got a wheel, I think, a pottery wheel. So, it would be something that might be fun to try.
That's right.
No,
right.
not only that, but you talk about spiritual. Throwing on a pot or on a wheel there's something very centering. There's something very positive and spiritual about making things on a wheel.
You're connecting with earth, right?
Yes.
Mud,
hands
dirt.
in the mud.
This is
right.
very good for us.
That's right.
There's a lot of microorganisms that come up into the air and get inside of us.
I've done it, and I really miss it.
Health.
It's just something very special.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you used to throw pots?
I've done that, yeah.
See.
Well,
college.
The good old days. For me, a big part of this too is, there's understanding how things are made and having appreciation for the work that went into things. But the part of it that deals with, can we make it ourselves? Can we build it ourselves? Can we sew our own clothes? These days, can we even cook our own dinner? So can we write in cursive? So there's a lot of things that have been part of our humanity, our connection between our hands and our eyes and our brain and our being, all of these things connected and working together to create things with our hands.
Those are nice examples, though. Those are good examples because those are things we can all do. I think it's pretty unrealistic for, to carry this throughout society. I just don't think everybody can do all these things. Slow. We live lives that are way too fast, and there are way too many of us, I think.
I was thinking about my grandmothers, and I can only guess about my great grandmother, but my grandmother sewed impeccably made clothing. She prepared everything from scratch, including grinding her own meats and the whole bit. She just could do so many things. And then my mother, she tried to keep it going.
Yeah.
And then when it came to me, the sewing of clothing, for example, when I had my first child, I sewed 3 things. And then that was it. But I think, we're really marketed to in this society that everything is hard to do and we just can't do it.
Labor-saving technology.
And it's stressful and,
we don't
have time.
What about the 60s,
I like the idea of slowing down.
I think the 60s and 70s, hippies, back to the land.
Yeah.
I think that, there was a whole revival of that.
We were doing macrame.
Yeah.
Firefox book and all that.
I had a Whole Earth catalog.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who wanted to make carpets, and her idea was to weave the wool, make it into the thread.
The whole bit.
It just wasn't realistic.
And dyeing it with onion skins.
Yes, the whole thing.
I think it can be realistic. It just depends on what your goals
and it's
are.
fun to do. I mean, even if it just starts as a hobby or pastime, the knowledge that you gain from that, like you learning to throw pots. I mean, the knowledge that you gain from that and the way how to use your hands to shape stuff, it carries over into other things.
Yeah. Hey, we have a caller. Caller, you are on the air. What's your name?
Oh, hi. I think my name's Charlie Morgan.
I think it is.
It's a great show.
Thanks.
I'm sorry I tuned in a little late, so you might have already touched on this, but mass, consumerism. Let me turn my radio off.
You should know better, Charlie.
I know.
Anyway, mass consumerism, I mean, on both ends, if you are into creating stuff that nobody really needs exactly, and there's massive, PR behind it to push it, to make it,
that everybody has to have it, yeah.
It starts at the beginning where the earth gets ripped off for raw materials, and then it ends up in the landfill.
Oh, yeah.
That's just not working. Another thing, too, is...
not a good life cycle there.
Yeah, and, I used to have, I'm not going to name any names, but I used to have a funny competition with another guy who had a funky truck like mine. And I
don't think you call your truck funky. Sorry, Charlie.
My own ego it was that way when I got it. And anyway, it turned out Michael Parmalee, may he rest in peace, sold me the truck for $1, a truck for $1. But, every once in a while somebody will come up to me and say, gee, man, how come you don't get a new truck? A newer truck?
I've thought that myself, actually.
Well, it's because it runs like a Swiss watch still. I change the oil so that, some wonderful kid who doesn't know what he's doing will forget to put the oil plug back on.
Right.
But I did some research, and I found out that it takes 100,000 gallons of potable, that's fresh water, to make a new vehicle. If you add up all the plastics, the processes and all the different types of materials, the upholstery, to say nothing of the metal or anything. So, I don't know. I always am interested in looking at video footage of people in Cuba, who...
kept those 50s cars going.
Yeah, they keep them going. And
8 miles of the gallon.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, that something can be moved along so that they can start driving cars that get better mileage. But I'm just sitting here, up in the bleachers with my little pennant, waving it for fix it.
Yeah.
Don't just throw it away.
Or buy it used.
Absolutely.
Yeah, buy it used or fix it. Anyway,
well, you have a Toyota. Toyota trucks are very much in demand because they were well made.
Yeah. Yeah.
That could be a gig for you, Charlie, a spokesperson for Toyota.
Good. I've been looking for a gig. I have one most of the time. But anyway, I'll let you guys go.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks for
Always
calling
nice
in.
to hear from you.
Everything. And I'll be listening.
All right,
you,
thanks.
Charlie.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, give us a call, 415-663-8492 or 8317. And we're talking about material intelligence, the appreciation of craftsmanship, of handymanship, of materials in general, just having a little knowledge about the stuff that you have in your closets and in your house and in your car. What they're made of, what the purpose, how they're put together, gives you a different feeling, different appreciation for craftsmanship and for people who put those things together. Even if they're from a sweatshop in India, knowing how to run one of those big sewing machines. That's that's skilled work, and yet they're paid next to nothing. And
talk about repetitive. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, that's mass production. But what if you had the time or the inclination to do it for yourself? I still have Donna's mother's Singer sewing machine.
Aha! What are you going to make me?
My mother was a knitter. She was constantly knitting, and she made beautiful things for everybody in the family, extended family.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was very lucky that my parents, both my mum was a knitter as well. My auntie actually knitted patterns for Vogue pattern books. She would test the patterns,
really?
See if
Nice.
they worked.
Yeah.
And my dad was like using his hands. He taught me how to use a block plane, get a piece of wood and plane it down, and all that. And
I got a C- in shop, by the way.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well,
And I think C- is his
That's a
way of
passing
not
grade,
giving
isn't
me a... Yeah. I think he was being... But the stool was, if you didn't stand on it right, it would fall over. But my mother loved that stool. She used it for ever.
Nice.
because it was made by you.
Because it was made by
There you
me.
are. It's
Increase
imbued.
the value.
It's
Yeah.
imbued with value.
And that
personal
little
value.
C- on the bottom just added, just made it that much nicer.
It's just the trademark. It's my son's logo.
But to say the crafts teacher in shop, what he did was make paddles all day.
Paddles.
Paddles. Yeah.
For
the kind
what
that,
purpose?
The kind that, you hit somebody, you spank somebody with.
What?
I think this was his way of keeping discipline and order in the class.
Oh, dear.
There was a constant threat that you could get a paddle in.
Yeah.
With a freshly made paddle.
He never did that, but I think that was his way of, okay, guys, let's keep things...
Yeah, and so
interesting.
in my case, from an early age, I was encouraged to figure things out. When I first got a car, I still fix my own vehicles if I can, or buy new computer parts for them. But doing it from an early age, it gives you the confidence to, know how things are put together. I can take this laptop apart and I can change some parts in it, and I don't feel scared about doing that.
Intimidated.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, the last laptop I had, I changed out everything.
Wow.
Because you could still do that. Now they're making them so you can't even change the battery.
Little fellas.
But stuff like that, knowing how things are put together, when something goes wrong, you can at least have a go at it yourself.
You were given the gift of exploring, trusting your instincts, and you were given the gift of lack of fear of failure, and so you're not afraid to poke around, and now you have so much experience that it's even more so easy for you to
now I make a living
go
out
there.
of it. It's a handyman.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I'm not I don't count myself as a craftsman by any means, and I certainly don't know a lot about a lot of things. I know a lot about a few things, or I know a little about a lot of things, but I'm not a skilled craftsman in any way.
I'd like to talk about that elitism that you mentioned earlier. Not now because we have a caller.
That's
but
right.
I don't want to forget to do that.
Okay. Caller, you are on the air. What's your name?
Hi, David.
Hi, David.
Hey,
Howdy.
Talk about a craftsperson.
yes.
Talk about a craftsperson.
What do you make, David?
What do I make? I design and make jewelry, and I cook my own meals.
Good for you.
Not all the time, but I just wanted to comment on that light bulb that I've heard the story of so many times. And I think, as I understand it, the reason that light bulb is still burning is because it's got a very, very, very thick filament.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is, yes, it's going to last a long time, and yes, it's going to take a lot of power to heat the filament up and
There's a person that bursts your bubble everywhere.
create light. Good. Glad.
Well, good to know. Thanks for sharing that.
And so we have light bulbs with very thin filaments in them, but they don't use much electricity,
Yeah.
and they're fragile.
Now we have LEDs that last forever.
And, well, we have those, too, and I don't know what the ramifications of those are.
Well, it's so absurd because now they sell lights with LEDs that can't be removed. They'll last so long that you just throw the light away.
Planned obsolescence
How do you like
again. No.
Well, you can recycle the aluminum that the flashlight's made out of.
Uh-huh.
If it's a flashlight. I don't know what you can recycle out of an LED light bulb, but I imagine there's a lot. Recycling is the knowledge about how to recycle things has gone up exponentially.
Mm-hmm. Sure. There's nowhere to send it to now that China's on the outs with us. They don't want recycling materials anymore.
Trash.
Well, that's just for our plastics, I think.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
They're now producing their own large quantities of trash that they don't need ours anymore.
Right. Signing off now, but thank you.
Thanks
you
for
very
calling,
much,
David.
Isn't that something we can imagine, that all these containers come across the Pacific and we unload all these goods and then we load them up with recyclable material, trash too, and we send it back. That's all we have to send to China.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Well, there's a person who used to fly, who lives in Marshall, used to fly commercial planes, and he would I forget what he used to fly over here, electronics over here, strawberries to Japan. Unbelievable amounts of jet fuel being spent and destroying the ozone layer for strawberries in Japan.
A little known fact is that Japanese like white strawberries, and so they raise them so they're white to satisfy the Japanese.
Very nice. White strawberries.
The things I know.
Yeah, there you go. See, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. That's what they used to say.
From me.
But well, yes, the light bulb, thin filaments use less electricity.
Shelley
elitism.
It just reminds me of the people who appreciate what they're doing, what they're using, etc. There are people that spend money on really fine furniture and very expensive goods. I think those you could find a quality of people paying more attention to what they're buying. You're talking about the chair and knowing what it's made of, but I think that when you get into these elite categories, they have the time and the inclination and the education to actually look into the provenance, etc. So I think that you have two different categories here. You've got the very elite group who understand what they're putting their money down. I just want to mention that. I mean, I might be wrong, but this is my...
It's not just understanding the value. It is that they actually have the, expendable cash to invest in that object, whatever it is.
But when an object of any kind is made one-off or by somebody who really knows what they're doing, it'll last longer than anything.
Right, and this is what my grandmother, she always said, you buy quality and it'll last your lifetime. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hand-me-downs. Remember hand-me-downs?
Worth the investment in something that's really well made of really good materials, that it'll last. But, we've got so many homeless people right now, they don't even have a place to put anything. Right. And, it's been pointed out to me, too, that... having a market to go to doesn't really help a homeless person who has no way to cook the food.
Mm-hmm. True enough.
But that's a whole nother story. I digress.
Elitism. But what was I going to say? Oh dear.
You were going to talk about.
Went away.
You were going to talk about the difference between arts and craft and how this.
Yeah, right.
The hierarchy.
The hierarchy of art itself. You're an artist, Shelley, so
yes.
You're an artist yourself, Stephen.
Thank you.
The hierarchy, or you're a fine artist, but you're not on the hierarchy of art, the art world. You're
I'm at a very low level at the
You're
moment.
above crafts.
Well, I don't necessarily think so, because I've been around some very fine craft, so
Yeah.
I know that there are some very artistic, amazing works that are put into the category of craft because
Absolutely.
of what they're made
Tremendous intelligence.
of. But they're actually so I think it's more high art, low art.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think craft can be in the high art category for sure. And fine art or can be in the low art category as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's the whole. There's another book out called Kraft, actually, CRAE diphthong FT, the old Saxon word, I guess it is. And he talks about, he's a medieval historian who thinks our understanding of craft only skims the surface right now, and that some of the old tools work better than new tools, like a scythe cuts long grass better than a weed whacker does. Anyway.
We have a caller, and caller, if you don't mind, we need to read a report.
You need to press the button.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll be with you, caller, shortly.
This is the beach hazard statement and the National Weather Service beach hazard statements remains in effect through Friday morning, December 7th, and the increased risk of sneaker waves on northern and central California beaches from Sonoma County south through Montgomery County, in particular on the west to northwest facing beaches. Steep beaches have a higher risk of steeper wave activity with greater wave run-up onto beaches than is normally expected. Unsuspecting beachgoers may suddenly be pulled out to sea. Woo. People walking along the beach should never turn their back to the sea. Fishermen should avoid fishing from rocks or jetties.
Thank you, Stephen.
Wait, whoops.
Oh.
Again, the beach hazard statement remains in effect through tomorrow morning, Friday, December 7th.
All right.
Well done.
KWMR is supported by our listener members and by the Dance Palace Community and Cultural Center, located at 5th and B Streets in Point Reyes Station. Members supported, the Dance Palace offers classes, events, and facility rentals for all the communities of West Marin. Membership information, volunteer opportunities, and schedules available at 415-663-1075 or online at dancepalace.org. KWMR is supported by Osmosis Day Spa Sanctuary, offering massages, organic facials, and the Japanese cedar enzyme bath. Osmosis is located near the Sonoma coast, just up Highway 1, and features 5 acres of gardens as well as local and organic meals. The spa menu, online booking, and info about the surrounding area can be found at osmosis.com. And you're listening to KWMR, Point Reyes Station. Let's talk call-in radio. If you'd like to call in, the number is 415-663-8492. And we have a caller. Caller, you are on the air. What's your name?
Hi, Shelley. It's MK.
MK, thanks for waiting.
Oh, no problem. I did get hit by a sneaker wave once a long time ago, and I know how terrifying that can be.
Wow.
Calling. This business of art and craft, I've given it a lot of thought, being a visual artist myself. I think that craft is more knowing which end of the paintbrush to use, and and how to use the tools and how to make things and how to follow directions. But it becomes art when you put yourself into it, and it sort of shifts the gear and begins to rotate. Mm-hmm. It begins to get bigger.
Yeah.
So I'm looking around my living room right now as I'm sitting here.
You're developing your material awareness. What is
Material intelligence.
Yes,
intelligence.
My daughter Alexandra is a totally a basic person. There's a coffee table sitting here that's made out of a big slab of some sort of hard wood that my son found some guy throwing away in the dump. And my daughter brought it home and refinished it and put 4 legs on it, and it's perfectly gorgeous. And
Yeah.
there are things like that all over this place. We're very, including the toilet paper holder, which is a galvanized pipe sticking out of a very fine piece of wood, and it works great. And she just put it together in about 5 minutes. She's really, really good at that sort of stuff. So anyway, I'm hearing what you're saying, and my mind keeps going to the 12-year-old at the mall, because I have one of those. My granddaughter's 12, and this business of buying every little piece of junk that happens, and the parents are scared of peer pressure and all the rest of it, and so they go for it, and it's just it's terrible. The cheap clothes and the cheap shoes and the cheap everything that gets to be such a throwaway thing. It's really too bad. I've got shoes that are.
MK, I'm wondering if
I still wear.
Right.
I'm wondering if one of the differences between art and craft is intentions. I think that's something that falls into it.
I'm not sure that it's actively intention, though. I think if you are an artist, it's going to happen.
Well, you can be an artist and pay particular attention to your craft and have a piece of art that's well crafted.
You don't want a chair that's going to fall apart.
But, that object might be, because it's an object, because it's solid, it could be, you would call it a sculpture, whereas I might not call a vase a sculpture, although it is sculptural.
Mm-hmm. And requires a great deal of skill.
And the difference between a vase and a vase is $35.
Ba-dum-bump.
Or a ticket to England, yeah. So where do you draw the line? I
don't think you have to draw a line.
Okay. Well, then,
You walked into that one.
But, I heard that art is something that's that you put yourself into. How about a child in an art class and 5 years old making something out of clay, or not even clay, maybe just
That's
out of
the purest form.
I mean, they have the intention. They really want to make something great. And I don't know, is that art? Or is it craft? Or is it just...
Well, we had a similar conversation. I worked for over 15 years with artists who were intellectually disabled. And that discussion relative to art came up often. Is it art if they don't know they're making art?
Well, that's my intention thing, right?
I guess it's in the eye of the purchaser.
Right.
There's
sort of...
Like Jeff Koons is a great example of something I wouldn't buy in a gazillion years. But
it's all about the marketing.
Favorite artist.
Yes, my favorite.
It's a great big blow-up balloon.
Love Jeff
Koons.
Koons.
A coffee table, and it costs $7 million.
Yeah.
Well,
if your coffee table's fancier than mine, it's a big whoop.
Well, and that kind of talks about, the idea of high art, low art. A lot of it is, again, marketing and the people who end up in the high art category, they get shown in museums. Often it's somebody out there is really pushing them to be thought of that way.
It's all public relations.
So they can make more money on that person's art.
Wonderful artists and craftspeople who are just minding their own business and doing it.
Right.
Yeah. And you don't hear about them. And their soul is enriched, and the people who are close to them are enriched, by this exchange of information and material and so on.
I don't think you can separate when you're talking about art versus craft. I don't think you can separate the fact that art. There's a certain intellectualism in art. It's in the mind as well as in the physicality. And I don't think in craft, I don't think that's the intention. I think you can transcend it. But, for example, Jehuli, put the money aside. I don't think you can consider money either. He gets a tremendous amount of money. But here is a meeting of craft and art. He's an artist, but he is a craftsman. Perhaps first and foremost, but I think his stuff is very artful. You wouldn't serve mashed potatoes to your Thanksgiving dinner in a Jehuli plate.
No, I had a friend that used a bowl for a bird bath.
Damn
It was wonderful. It was a beautiful bird and a beautiful bowl.
Yeah.
It was just perfect. Yeah, Dale Trujillo comes from here, so Seattle. So,
Yeah.
so.
But again, I'm just thinking about it. I never really thought it before. But what makes him an artist? Because essentially, if you've seen how he works, I saw a documentary. They're blowing glass. They're making things out of glass, and they're using their hands. They're using fire.
Well, I think it's going beyond functionality is part of it.
Yes.
You know,
Since Dale lost vision in his eye in that accident, he doesn't do it anymore. He hasn't done it for a long time.
Yeah, well, you couldn't possibly be as prolific
He
as
has guys.
Yeah, of course.
Other craftsmen or artists. Are they artists or craftsmen? Huh?
Well,
they're craftsmen because they're making his work.
Arguments like that can go on and on.
Like a fabricator.
well, at least for an hour.
There you go. Okay, it's beautiful, clear, and freezing cold here. So
Oh, enjoy it.
Lovely.
Thank you for calling.
I'm keeping warm and dry.
All
Good.
right.
Take good care of yourself.
Thank you,
too.
MK.
Thanks for
Okay,
calling.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, so Dale Trujillo doesn't do the work himself anymore. Jeff Koons had never done the work himself. He's always had the factory working for him. Andy Warhol.
Well, you couldn't-
Sam Francis
No,
here.
that's not true with
He
Andy
had someone
Warhol.
else printing for himself for him.
But Andy Warhol, he started
ran
out
his
as
own
a-
screen prints?
Well, he started out as a graphic designer,
So graphic design, art, or
Well,
something else, commercial skill.
That's a good question.
What's the
Well, and
difference?
speaking of commercial skill, when I was in college, we had to literally cut and paste things and rub letters off and get them all lined up. I mean, we had to have actual skill, physical hand coordination skill. And now it's all done.
Laying out the newspaper
computer,
with
yeah.
the
Well,
wax
And it-
roller.
you
Take
know, it's a
architecture
lot
as an
easier.
example.
But, it's definitely different. And I had an uncle who used to hand retouch photographs. So he had to actually mix the right shade of color first and then very carefully put tiny little touches
Fantastic.
And, that's all done with computers now, too.
I wouldn't have disdain for tool. I mean, a computer is a tool in the right hands.
Sure.
So, the fact that an architect, for example, does everything computer generated now instead of drawing it all out, why
Well,
not?
here's the one that gets
Just a
me.
tool,
It's
yeah.
billboards. It used to be an art. You literally were painting huge murals, hand painting. And that went away. It's completely unnecessary.
Lettering, sign makers.
Well,
Cool.
that still happens.
Mostly vinyl now.
Well, that's true. That's easier.
And they have machines that cut out the design and all.
Oh, yeah.
But we're fortunate in West Marin that it's a place where people the first people here were, of course, living off the land and self-sufficient. Ranchers came. If you're a rancher, you know how to do everything. You have to because, you don't call
Pretty
the plumber
isolated.
if your plumbing breaks on a ranch.
I don't think
you
they
do
had
it
plumbing
yourself.
back then.
No, I mean now.
Oh, okay.
If your tractor breaks down, you're going to try and fix it yourself. If your hydraulic hose bursts, you're going to replace that yourself. You're not going to call AAA or something. You have to look after animals. You have to. It's endless. You have to know everything. Including being sort of a amateur veterinarian.
But they're not milking themselves. I mean, they have machines that milk the cows.
Oh yeah,
But they have to hook
but
them
they
up.
have to. It's a almost. I mean, they get power and water and but you
They
have to
have to
know
fix
how to
the
fix the
milking
well
machines.
and the well pump and all that. So it's a almost self-sufficient life because when you're in that situation, you are basically doing everything yourself. It's a great thing. I mean, I went through my sailing years. When you're out there and something breaks, you're fixing it yourself. Otherwise, you're going down, basically. And because in my earlier years when I was a student, I was fixing my own car, I wasn't afraid when I got on this big boat. I got a job for 2 years working on a huge boat, fixing the diesel engines. They said, we need someone who can be on deck but also in the engine room. I said, well, I'll do that. So
Great.
And then I come here, and the first place I stayed was on a ranch out in the backcountry here, and I got to learn how to act around livestock. How not to spook the cattle when you're trying to move them into some other place, and being around that. It's a whole wonderful, ongoing learning experience, and that teaches you not to fear animals so much that most animals don't necessarily want to attack you. They want to get away from you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But it's a wonderful thing to be open to learning and trying to learn how to do different things. And we have a young culture that has a tendency to feel like they don't know how to do anything.
Well, except out here we have the young people who are homesteading. Yeah, I mean, guys like Aaron Wilder got a degree in something, and here he is growing veggies. It's a wonderful thing.
I think industrialization, though, was about getting more things to more people, creating a quote-unquote prosperity.
Yeah, a better life.
A better life. And, there's an ideal behind it. And, we've gotten to the point where we're overboard. And to keep people employed, so to speak, we're consuming the planet. Yeah. So, yes, we don't need that, and we shouldn't be taking everything home in plastic containers and et cetera. But I think in the beginning the notion was that people could have the life less expensive, more access to products that were useful. So
back to
is not
a washing machine,
material intelligence,
a mangle. Instead of having to wring your clothes, you've got a mangle.
Aside from whether we know how to do it ourselves or not, or if we have an awareness of how it's made and how that's possible, is that awareness of where did it come from, and like you were talking about, who was paid 2 cents to make this thing I'm wearing, that I paid I got mine at a thrift store, so but I probably knew it was at least $20.
Which that black jacket? More than 20.
I made this myself.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a scarf I'm wearing around my neck. I forget I'm on radio. Yeah. So the cost was the beautiful yarn, but the making I did. But what was the point of what I was saying? Just the awareness of how things are manufactured, and that when we buy products from certain manufacturers, we're in essence supporting that entire mechanism, that process of how things are made, so that we can have cheaper things, so that we can have more things and be good consumers. But we've been trained that everything is so hard and we don't have time for any of it. We've been repeatedly told that, so we believe it. But it's all a choice. How we live is a choice, and we can choose to be stressing out and running constantly, or we can choose to slow down and take more time.
And when you retire and you have time, for example, to get more involved in craft, or they relegate this to hobby, which is, I think, pejorative. You become a hobbyist.
It just means you can't write off the expenses on your tax return.
I think we live in a very we have a rare community where there are so many artists and there are so many craftspeople. Most communities do not have this. I was in Europe a few months ago, and it was in these towns, even like Cordoba and Granada, and I said, well, where are the craftspeople? I want some of these local crafts. It was very difficult to find, and when I did find them, I didn't find, I didn't find stuff that I really felt that it was special, unusual, that people are putting some kind of intelligence behind it. I was a little shocked, frankly.
Well, I wonder why that is. Give us a call, 12415-663-8492. We're talking about awareness of our stuff. What it's made of, where it's from, how to fix it, what effect that has on your life.
Any wonderful artistic, fine craft, finely made, beautiful artwork, any good cheese, a fine wine, it all can end up becoming a just purely a commodity. And then the production of these things kind of starts to chip away at that feeling of the container of the maker's spirit is somehow falling by the wayside.
But I have a thing for boxes. No, it's a tremendous. When you take apart a box and you look at how it's made.
What do you mean, a wooden box or cardboard?
Cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a craft, or let's put it this way: the people that design these boxes to work the way they do, it's very special. Yeah. And I enjoy that. I take boxes apart and I look at them and I go, wow, look at this box. And if the box is put together that it doesn't use any glue, that's even...
Origami.
Yes, that's right.
Origami and cardboard.
It's even more... I go, oh, this has glue.
This is an inferior box. No, that's true. Simple containers. Someone had to design all that stuff.
Apple Computer, their products, the boxes are phenomenal.
Yeah.
You almost
presentation.
You want to save the box, but then you look and say, well,
what else
would
can
I
go
do
in there?
So a lot of that design work again now is done by computers, by algorithms, and algorithms producing algorithms.
But isn't the person that actually figures that out? Isn't that person?
I guess so.
Isn't there a craft to it or an artistic?
Well, I think it's industrial technology or industrial design.
So how, I see there's something I don't know. How do you design a box? Do you have to tell the machine where you want the crease lines to be?
It's the same way you would
design
line a car. Or anything that you're going to make, you create a prototype. So I would say that the person who designed the first box got out some cardboard and started to cut and fold and figure it out.
I think where it changes, though, we're not just talking about an ordinary cardboard box. I think it depends on what is going to be in the box.
Sure.
And how valuable it is.
A Fabergé egg, for example, would not be in a simple cardboard in a lunch carton. No, but things like that, simple things like that. Well, how are pencils made? I never knew how pencils were made.
I've been to a pencil factory in Cub Scouts.
And I regret not going to. I always wanted to do it, and I never got around to it. The string factory, the twine factory in Petaluma, which is now a hotel, and it was still going when I was here. You could hear the machines clacking away up there.
That would be
I always
interesting.
thought I'd love to go and see how that works, but no, I never did.
They took us to a. This was back when they actually made things in Ohio. A crayon. Manufacturing, very interesting with all the colors.
Wax crayons, like
the crayons,
Crayola
kids,
thing?
Exactly.
Oh, I saw a fabulous video of a woman who, they show her start to finish. She starts by going and cutting down bamboo. And then she has to clean that bamboo a certain way. And, all of the steps, the whole entire process to ultimately build I believe, a chair or a bench
out of bamboo
that you can sit in. So over the course, I believe, of a day, from start to finish.
Yeah, it's fabulous. Some of the old crafts, whatever you want to call them, making string twine out of coconut fiber. I watched that when I was out sailing around. They're just rolling the fibers. They take the fibers and they roll them on the thighs, and they produce this really strong senet twine that they lash canoes together with.
Wow.
Of course, they all buy fiberglass boats now, but
that's an interesting point, though. I think if you go back to, say, indigenous people or village people, Thailand or wherever, who are making these things for themselves, I don't know if we just look at them as craftspeople. I think it's the modern industrial. It's a reaction to modern industrial society that all of a sudden we label people who just have been making them for forever. That are being lost. All of a sudden we call that craft.
Right.
Did we have to have the loss of it in order to rediscover it?
Oh, interesting. Interesting thought. Give us a call. We have a few minutes left. 415-663-8492. And I was just thinking even though it's all mass-produced and melamine and particle board and like that, but IKEA furniture, you have to put it together yourself. That in itself gives you a certain appreciation for a piece of rotten furniture. I mean,
putting together
some of the stuff they have is okay. It's functional. It looks all right. It will fit anywhere. It matches every decor. But putting it together, it's I think that's a laudable thing.
I think it's fun.
Yeah,
I enjoy it.
It's a good marketing ploy. I think it's like that famous old story about cake mix. That they wouldn't buy cake mix because women wouldn't buy cake mix because all they had to do was add water, and the cake mix guy couldn't figure it out, and then they thought, well, why don't we take the dried powdered egg out of there, and then they have to add water and an egg, and
oil.
Suddenly there it goes. Woof.
Yeah, so it's just a box of flour, actually.
Well, it would have flour, sugar,
good
baking
container.
powder.
Right.
That's
all it was. And that was the start of a major business. So that's a wonderful thing. They're very, very intelligent, these people.
Yes, it's true. And again, it comes back to, it's too hard to measure the flour and the baking powder. Yeah.
But so furniture making, yes. Let's go back to chairs again. I don't know. Chairs are ubiquitous. We all use them.
I have an uncle who builds musical instruments.
Where are they from? Oh, no.
And he...
That's an art.
He creates all the jigs that he needs to build the instruments.
Now,
and,
there.
I think that's art.
Yeah,
I think that's an art to do that.
He can do it all with wood.
You wouldn't call that
pretty
craft.
Awesome.
I mean, you wouldn't. You could call it both. I mean, it fits your
depends,
criteria, Paul. But there's so much intelligence and skill that goes into that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to sound right.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's
and
not
it has to be beautiful.
Just not putting wood together.
Right.
And different woods have different sounds. We have a caller. You are on the air. What's your name?
It's David again.
Hey, David again.
And just listening to you guys talk and thinking about it myself, it strikes me that one difference between art and craft is the utilitarian aspect of it.
Thought about
if you use it every day, it's craft. If somebody takes the trouble to make something and you wind up using it, whether it's a beautiful bowl or a woven basket or a hat, and there's certainly artistic aspects to what goes into craft. Some crafts, there's not much art at all.
David, how do you consider yourself? Are you an artist or a craftsperson?
Craftsperson.
Okay.
Mostly. I mean, I do some artistic things, some design things, but a lot of what I do, especially now, I'm not doing a lot of new artistic things, but I'm doing a lot of repetitive things, just trying to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
And cater to the people who walk in the door.
So, jewelry, rings as a utilitarian object makes you a craftsperson? Yeah. Craftsman?
Yeah, functional art.
Functional art tends more toward the craft. That's my vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to go to the American Craft Council show for a couple years in a row out in Baltimore. And just, wow. It's the amazing things that just make your jaw drop and you say, wow.
And there is a craft museum in San Francisco. I haven't gone in it, but there is a museum there of craft. Yeah.
Well, that's today's show. Thank you,
Thanks
everybody.
for calling in, Dave.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for calling in. Thank you for listening. And, think about everything you own and the materials and its provenance. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank
and
you.
KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.